and you know that the median age of our population is very low. So we strongly believe that in that regard, the engine, the growth engine of the world sits in Africa. There's no doubt about it. In a aging population world, where the world is subdivided, receiving countries, aging populations, and then on the other hand, you have the Africa with the youth, dynamism. There's no other option but to look at this continent. So again, the engine is here. Now we have to. This is what we're working on to promote that much more. The question, the framework, the legal framework, the global environment is naturally key to confidence and trust in the capacity of the investors not only to invest but also to repatriate. So this is what we are working on. So basically, I 100% agree and concur to what said earlier. The capital market pockets are very deep, and there's no doubt about it that we count that this idea of getting the fundings can only be done through capital. Again, take the example I usually take, which is BlackRock has under management something like 10 trillion US dollars, which is basically GDP. This is
company.
One investor.
Yeah.
So this is the solution. This is the way. But the only way BlackRock would invest, they have to trust the engine. They have to trust the return. They have to trust the investors. They have to trust the framework. And they also have to share the same vision, which is, in some ways, we are linked together in this world, where mitigation and adaptations, in a world where we know that the objective of 1.5 degrees has to be respected, has to be met, but it's not only met in half of the world, but it's a global ship here. So yeah, I do trust that very much.
It's that we hear that in the international debate as well. One is how do you bring private sector in financing sustainability or financing the development needs, and the other is the capacity we have to bring projects that are at a good size, big size, to be financed. I'm saying that in the perspective of developing countries and eventually in Africa, right? So in this debate, sometimes it tends to be a bit immature. I'm just being provocative here, but the point on saying we need de-risking to get in a project or we need profitability to get in a project, etc., is a debate at a project level. But it's like showing the moon and one is looking your finger, right? The big scale on mobilizing private capital is capital markets. And banks have been doing that for a while. World Bank is doing it. I'm Secretary General of the Finance in Common, but I'm also Deputy Executive Director for Mobilization within AFD, the French Development Agency. We mobilize 10 billion a year in the capital markets in order to make ODA and concessional funding in countries. And it's not French government money. It's private money from capital markets. Mm-hmm. BOAD is doing it. So this model is not new. So what we are saying is probably the African development finance institutions don't have enough access to the capital markets, or they are not building enough capital market in Africa. So because they are somehow, development banks can be the one creating the right ecosystem and creating the infrastructure for capital market. But they are also price makers. At some point, when a private sector entity issue bonds, having a development bank investing in the first can help also to deepening this market, right? Creating it. So that's where we should go at. But I think if we want to tap the potential of these development banks in this ecosystem, we should think of them as an asset class. By saying that, probably it can be blurred. People cannot understand what asset class means. But listen, if you have government bonds, it's clear for everyone. Corporate bonds is clear for everyone. Why don't we have public development banks bonds and not just being fragmented in this bonds market by having these gender bonds, green bond, etc., etc. We are doing it. We are doing it very well. But at some point, if our balance sheet is a sustainable balance sheet, if we are development banks that are investing in SDGs, it means that if we follow those alignment principles showed by the work we are doing within AFG, we can be seen as an incentivizing asset class where private sector can chip in and having also the right reporting just to say, okay, I invest in a public development bank. It is SDG aligned. It is sustainable. So I have an incentive. So that can be also a way to scale the potential of having private sector chipping in through capital markets. And Africa is a potential for that. Right, so that's my first point. The second point I want just to make, it's not related to your question, but I think it's also something we should see in an African perspective. Investing in Africa is still complicated for a lot of persons. Probably just sometimes, for lack of knowledge. Who knows better than the public development banks that are in their countries or in the region, investing day to day, helping the governments, also helping the private sector to grow. Those public development banks are the one that they risk every day their own economies. They don't need anyone else to do it. They're doing it every day. So having those public development banks to raise their own capital base, to have the right capacity of originating projects, good quality projects. I think it's an opportunity for everyone, starting by the international AFIS and also the private sector locally, but also internationally, to have enough projects at a good quality where they can invest. So those are just the two last points.
So the majority of this increase came in 2022, when African climate finance investment crossed the 50 billion mark for the first time ever. Some of the tools that we've made available as part of the IDFC is to ensure that, both national, regional, and all the other banks and partners that we work with have the right tools to mobilize more resources. And I think that is what the IDFC is all about. We come in together, we co-finance together. We want more co-financing together, and we are encouraging that. And we believe that the tools that we have put in place are the right ones to help each countries actually mobilize more. There's a difficulty in mobilizing climate finance, and that's quality of project. And this comes again with the expertise and the know-how. We have put that in place. We have a facility dedicated particularly for that. So I think through those tools that we've presented earlier, we believe that we can mobilize more. But we need to partner more. We need to talk more. And I think what Adama just said about the fix and the opportunity to talk more and to leverage, the presence of all these key people at those meetings are key enough to position ourselves and to collaborate together and to mobilize more resources.
And showing the development, what you mentioned on the importance of how much we are able to mobilize for our region is very little. We are actually looking at the innovation parts of what we can do to make sure that we attract more resources. And when you're looking at innovation, many things have been done elsewhere with our partners being part of the IDFC. So what we're doing is that we're working together to make sure that innovation, we can bring it as well in Africa. But we cannot just bring the innovation and copy and paste because we have different circumstances. So we need to make sure that innovation that we bring to the ground, we assess and make sure that it suits and fits the needs of our population, our countries, and so on and so forth. And Frank also mentioned the power of co-financing, and that's very important. And like I mentioned earlier, what we are doing as well is to make sure that those partners that have very high rating rates from rating agencies can also be around our table when we're discussing. And those partners make sure, together with us, will allow and enable us to attract and mobilize more resources on the capital market. So that's very important. And like I said, partnership is something that we believe can help and support BYD's ability to mobilize resources on the capital market, and that's what we're doing. And we believe the collaboration with the IDFC members can help and support that as well.